Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's James and this is my Mark IV Toyota Supra. And although it looks to be in really good condition, this car is in desperate need of some TLC.
And that would be because everything in this car is either broken, scratched, missing, or really, really dirty.
Before I show you what we're going to do today, I need to address the other elephant in the room. Now this Supra, I'd recently bought it as a donor car to fix that Supra. But unfortunately, after owning it for a couple of weeks and experiencing what it feels like to drive and own my own Supra after nearly a decade of not, I came to the conclusion I'm gonna find it really hard to pull this car apart. And for any of you who watched my last video, you'll already know just how good a condition this car is. And I don't know if it's just me, but I've got a little bit of a habit of doing things like this, where I buy something fully intending to use it for something else, and then I can't bring myself to pulling it apart. A little bit like this Aristo over here. This Aristo was originally bought for the engine, and I was gonna pull the engine out, put the engine in the Supra, and just scrap this car. And when it rocked back here on the tow truck, and I seen it under a nice light, I thought, this car is way too good to scrap. I mean, it's got a few little scratches and things here and there, but overall it's, it's really nice. And then I had a look inside the interior and well, I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit of a sucker for these velour interiors. And you look around and it's just really luxurious. It's got every electronic you can think of. And for 30 years ago, it was way ahead of its time. And after all these years, it still all works because it's a Toyota. And then I look up and I see a sunroof. Well, I've never owned a car with a sunroof. I thought I can't throw this car out, but it does have potential to be the ultimate sleeper. So I did a few light modifications, but that's a story for another day. So until I work out a solution, whether that be buy another donor car or just suck it up and buy all the parts individually, my Supra, that's been my project for nearly 10 years, still needs some loving. And I thought, what better place to start than with the suspension? So today, we're gonna totally remove front and rear subframes, strip all the bushing out, strip all the arms off, replace everything we can get our hands on. And by the end of this episode, you're not gonna believe how good it looks. So let's get started. Okay, full disclosure, I'm in a workshop here that next door, there's a bunch of guys going at it, trying to get cars done within a certain time frame. So you're gonna probably hear like banging and rattle guns and all sorts of things. So I'm gonna do my best to edit that out in post and make this an enjoyable video. This will actually be my first time filming myself repairing a car ever. So here goes nothing. So in order to remove this subframe, the first thing we have to do is pull the engine out. Once we got the engine out, we can then undo, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 bolts. So there's 2 here, 2 on the other side, 3 back here, and 3 on the other side. Other than that, it's just undoing the shocks, brake lines, and literally this front subframe will be pretty much ready to go. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's pissing down rain out there. It's really bad on a tin roof. I'm gonna go get me an airline.
Okay, step one's an obvious one, but an important one. We're gonna pull off all these wheels. Pew, pew. It's like something out of Star Wars.
There we go. Now what I might do is I'll drop the whole subframe with engine on it and then just lift the engine off later. Because we built a like a cool table that'll just support the whole lot. Okay, I'm pretty sure that we're good to go. The breather hose is off, the brake lines are off on both sides, the shock bolt is off. All we need to do now is pull 10 bolts off and drop the subframe out. Oh, and the steering. One mark there.
Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm removing most of the subframe bolts out and I'm gonna leave it dangling on a couple. So when it comes down, I can just pull the rest of them out and lift the car up.
I knew you'd pull through for me, baby. And as easy as that, the whole lot's out.
All right, here's me mate Betsy the forklift. She also happens to be a really good engine crane as well. She might look a bit rough around the edges, but she's one tough cookie.
So here's the front subframe. Now, I'm not gonna say this car is gonna be a show car, but I want it to look nice and pretty, so let's get into it. Should always organize your bolts. Saves confusion later.
I don't want to bore you with a history lesson, but there are some very good reasons why this car, even 30 years later, is so iconic. When the Mark IV Supra came out, Toyota wasn't known for their sports cars, so they really had to go above and beyond with every part of this car to compete with manufacturers like Porsche and Ferrari. And that is what made this car so special. Even the name Supra means to go beyond in Japanese, and that's exactly what they did with this car. Every single bit of this car was obsessed over. And in terms of suspension, the Mark IV Supra made significant leaps forward. Toyota used aluminium extensively in the suspension system, particularly for the upper suspension arms and front subframe, to reduce the car's overall weight and improve handling dynamics. That helped the Supra shed around 100 kilos compared to the previous model. What's lesser known is the Supra shares some of its suspension with the Lexus SC, or Sora if you live in Australia. And this gave it a really solid base to develop the Supra, meaning it wasn't just built for daily driving, but also perfect for tuning and pushing the limits. You don't need to go crazy modifying the suspension, because on this car, it's already so well put together. The double wishbone suspension at the front and rear is a standout feature for the Mark IV, something only usually reserved for serious sports cars. It provides better traction and makes the car incredibly agile through corners, and the use of lightweight aluminium parts reduce the car's overall unsprung weight, making the car feel even more connected to the road. Some models also came with electronically adjustable dampeners, which was cutting edge at this time, allowing the car to switch between modes on the fly, which is just one more reason why the Mark IV Supra was so ahead of the curve. For its time, this car was really the complete package.
Oh, that's it. All right, guys, now that I've got the sweat off my brow and I've got my breath back, I thought I'd show you what's up. Now, I wasn't sure about how to approach filming this, so I just thought I'd lay it all out, quite literally, and just show you what I want to do with everything. So starting with the control arms, you can see that they've got a bit of surface rust on them, and I think that's just a lot of dust from the workshop. All the bushing needs to be replaced as well. They weren't majorly cracked, but they're old, and while it's out, you know, you got to do it. The same goes for the upper control arms as well. I'm going to replace all the bushing in these and make them like new. I thought about getting aftermarket adjustable control arms, but the factory control arms in these cars have enough adjustment for my purposes, and if I track it pretty hardcore in the future, then I'll consider getting fully adjustable control arms. Obviously, I'm going to get a bigger sway bar kit, replace these for adjustable links too, so we can dial it in on the wheel liner. That'll be cool. And then with the hubs, I'm going to replace the bearings because, you know, again, it's out. I'll replace all the studs as well because these studs are getting old. You don't know the life before I've owned them. And if you're going to be doing some hard tracking or going quick, you want to know that they're not brittle and they're not going to snap. So going to replace those. And especially important for the rears. If you're going to run a lot of power to the rear wheels, you probably want to consider something like an ARP stud. Then we've got the brakes. I'd like to replace the brakes with a bigger kit. These are just too small for turbo applications, and you know, if you're making any sort of power, you want to be able to stop. You can get a lot of cool kits with 6 and 8 pot fronts and 4 pot piston rears. And you know, whatever kit you get depends on what you want to do. So I'll show you that in a later video.
All right, that's enough chat. Let's get onto the rear.
Oh, all right. So we've run into our first problem already, and it's to do with brake lines. So with brake lines, you should never use an open-ended spanner. The reason why is you're just more likely to round the bolt. And if you round that fitting, you've got to cut up a line and flare a new line to fix the problem. It's a lot of hassle for what could be avoided quite easily. So no open-ended spanners, you'd use a pipe spanner. But if you put the pipe spanner on and if you come closer, you'll see that. If your pipe spanner, once you put a bit of pressure there, feels like you're about to round the fit in, don't use it. My trick, get a set of multi-grips, put it on, adjust it to the right size. Now you want it nice and tight because you don't want to slip, and then give it a, and that is how you undo really tight brake lines that are at risk of rounding on the edges. Anyway, hope you found that interesting. And then if you want to, once it's loose, you can use your open ender if you get the right size.
Ooh, I almost forgot. How rude of me.
Hi, I'm Jim.
Jim and I have worked together for what, 8 years, something like that, so we know each other pretty well.
Trying a new venture.
Yeah, trying a new venture. We talk a bit of shit and try not to swear too much. That's probably one of the biggest challenges of this video is not swearing.
It's definitely the hardest bit for me.
Yeah. Okay, this is just about ready to come out. Now, since yesterday, we did some modifications to that trolley that you saw. We put a remote control system on it. So when you click, it comes to you. Not bad, look at that, would you? Oh man, my jokes are shit.
After dealing with the realization that my long life dream of wanting to become a comedian probably wasn't going to happen, I put the car down and started to take the rest of the subframe bolts out. And then we were ready to get this thing out.
As easy as that. All right, so I'm glad I pulled that out because this thing looks pretty average. It's got dust absolutely everywhere. Believe it or not, that was black once upon a time. I think it's just like overspray and, you know, panel shop dust. It's got a few spiders living in it. We've got them everywhere around Australia. And yeah, it just looks pretty rough. So I'm really excited to be able to get it looking nice and fresh again and then just put it all back up. All right, so one interesting thing you can see with this setup, it's missing something here. And that's because this cradle setup is out of a GE, which is obviously a non-turbo Supra. On the turbo Supras, they actually had an extra bush here because when you're pushing more power, that helps stabilize the diff and stop you from getting that axle tramp. So if you have a look at this setup, you can see at the front here, there's bushing up near the pinion, and down the back here, there's only one bush. So under heavy acceleration with lots of power coming down to the back, this whole differential can go like that. So if you've ever sort of dropped the clutch and taken off trying to lay the power down and it's gone, that's what the axle tramp is. But a little unknown thing to a lot of people is that it doesn't matter whether you have a GE or a GTE, you can actually put the GTE bushing in here. So when you turbocharge your GE and you want to be able to lay the power down, well, you can if you put that bush in. Other upgrade that I want to do that we'll be doing to this is we'll be going all neoprene bushes by Super Pro. So they're not a sponsor of this video, but I think they've got a pretty good product. And it's just going to make for a nice solid back end. It's going to be more predictable and we're going to be able to lay the power down. Let's start stripping this thing down.
All right, there's a lot to do here and we're going to move through it pretty quick. And although it doesn't look it, Jimmy and I have a system which basically allows us to strip this thing down pretty quick. We plan ahead of time, he knows what I'm doing next and I know what he's doing next. And we help each other out when we need to.
Oh, can you hold it for a sec?
You're tightening it.
I know, I was pulling. Thanks, Jim. Oh, there we go.
Winner, winner.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
And that's why mechanics charge more if you watch.
Oh, by the way, I'll show you in a minute. We rang up Toyota, local to us, and got a quote for upper and lower control arms, front and rear, and you won't believe the price they quoted us. To get these arms out, I don't know if you can see this over here, but there's like this little section that sticks out. Right there is pretty much the prime place to hit it, and it sort of just jolts it. Eventually, if you hit it enough times, it'll allow this taper just to loosen off and the arm will pop out. So yeah, that's always the easiest way to pull arms off.
It's pretty common for any type of control arm or suspension arm to have a taper at the end if it's connecting to some sort of wheel hub, mainly because it's the most effective way to do it. As you tighten up the nut on the end, the taper just pulls itself more into the hub, which allows for a more tighter fit.
That's a 10. Where me 12? Oh, there. Someone's put it in the wrong hole. I hate when someone puts it in the wrong hole. Well, not me, but anyway. If you take those bolts out, it doesn't fall off. You've just got to move that back. Like, how nice is that? Thanks, Toyota.
It's nice when someone thinks
Yeah, it's nice when someone thinks about the mechanic for once in a while.
Usually an engineer will climb a pile of 500 virgins to root one of us.
Allegedly. Or it's just my opinion.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's alright.
Yes, all right. So if I was a pit crew right now, I would have been fired for that, if that was Formula One.
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah, it should have been done 3 times as quick. Okay, so like the front, I laid the rear out so we can have a look at everything together. Now, these control arms here, they do, well, this one's not too bad, but they do move quite easily, which is a sign that they're getting a little bit old. And I wanted to replace these, but I rang my local dealer and legit, the quote for front and rear control arms, upper and lower, was $10,400. I'll show you that on screen anyway in a second. Realistically, they don't have anything wrong with them. When they're in the car and they're tight, there's no play in the ball joint. So I think I'm going to replace all the bushing, and then just, if it becomes a problem in the future, I'll deal with it then. But for now, these are okay, especially at the cost of 10 grand. So yeah. And then with the differential, I would like to put a LSD center in this, but I won't be able to get it in time for this video. Something like a Gaiken or a Kaz, that'd be really good. Probably just a 1.5 way. And I think these drive shafts will be all right. I mean, they're pretty solid. I'll tear them apart, I'll have a look inside, and yeah, we'll go from there. Obviously, we'll replace the donut, and we've got to figure out what we're doing for the drivetrain, but that'll be another video. But for now, I think we've got to clean these parts up and start pressing out some bushes, and yeah, let's get back to work. Okay, so this is our press room. Quite messy at the moment, but that's because a lot of work gets done in here. So what we're going to do now is, I've got the front control arms and front hub. We're going to start by pressing out all the bushings and the bearings in these 3 parts. So firstly, because on this bush here, you can see that the rubber just overlaps the edge of the control arm. And really, I think that the bush itself probably starts maybe a few millimeters in. I'm going to soak this in a water dispersant to make it come out easier. So I've got a socket at the top here, and I'm just going to put this section here. I know it looks a little bit dodgy, but the main principle is you want to come down as square as you can. You don't want to be cockeyed, because if you come out on an angle and you pressure that angle, you run the risk of slipping the top socket or the sleeve off the edge of the bush or creating more problems, even potentially damaging the control arm. So let's push this bush out. And there we go. Now, with this bottom bush, this one's a little bit trickier. This bush, I can't actually push it out from this side because they have this steel plate here.
So I took the press down a notch and simply put an extension on the socket so I could press the bush out through the eye of where the first bush was positioned. But unfortunately, my phone stopped recording due to the limited memory left on it. Whoops. But I think you get the idea. So I continued pressing the bushes out on the lower control arms, followed by the series of bushes in the rear control arms. And that's it. Alright, so onto the wheel hubs. So firstly, we have to remove the handbrake shoes, which involves getting the little spring and pin assembly out. Then we're going to put them into a bag for left and right so we don't lose them, because we're going to have this apart for at least a few days to a week, possibly even 2. So now I'm removing the springs and the adjuster, and once I remove these springs and adjuster, I can just remove the shoes and then look at taking the handbrake cable off. Now we just have to knock the cap off the back. This cap protects the rear of the hub from dust and other contaminants. There's a nut at the rear of the stub axle, and that needs to be removed so we can press the stub axle out.
Okay, I've got it all set up here. As you can see, this shield is floating, and that's because I've supported the actual hub from a couple of nuts under here. So when we press this out, we're not actually pressing and bending the shield for the brakes at the same time. So let's go. Yep, and just like that, it's nice and easily coming out. You can see here that part of the race for one of those sealed bearings is still here. Ordinarily, if we wanted to use this stub axle, we'd pull this seal off and then we'd take this race off, clean that up and go again. But we're replacing that. Now just holding that bearing in, there's a circlip. So if we take this circlip out and we press it through, we have a hub that's ready to be cleaned up and put back together. Now these aren't circlip pliers, but we might be able to get it out with these.
I know I'm being lazy not walking back to the toolbox, but if I can do it like this, I'll be saving time and looking like a pro.
Yeah. Experience. There we go. It's out. So this hub now is ready to be cleaned up and put back together. Of course, after it's been painted. All right, we've got everything loaded up in the trailer. Let's take it down to the painters.
We were making really good time. Anthony and his dedicated guys got straight on the job. And you know what they say about a good paint job? It's 90% prep. And his guys know this really, really, really well. Maybe too well. They geared up, mixed the paint, checked the colour, and sprayed the parts in record time before leaving them to sit overnight in the oven.
No, I really appreciate this.
Yeah, no, sure.
I didn't expect you to turn it round as quick as you did. Especially with all the stuff you got going on.
I just got the apprentice today, mate, just fucking start rubbing these. So they just, you see them in the video, they're literally sitting there just fucking scrubbing it like.
Scrub harder.
I got back, showed Jimmy what we were working with.
How good is this gonna look when we put it all on the car?
Ooh, very smooth.
Before getting straight onto sandblasting. Now, I've never done sandblasting before, but I found it quite satisfying, except for the fact that I had sand in every crevice imaginable for a good 2 days afterwards.
That was so good.
It was definitely worth it.
Before and after, look at that. Woo, magic.
The results of the sandblasting was better than expected, especially in these gaps. This part of the project was coming together nicely. Now the Supra was ready to put together, and everything was going fine until it wasn't. What I'm about to tell you was actually really hard for me to say because I value your time and I don't want to waste it. But unfortunately, this was unavoidable. Now you're probably wondering why we're going for a drive. Well, that'd be because I stuffed up. You see, when you're doing a build with this sort of detail and you're replacing all the bearings and all the bushes and you even go into the extent of painting
all the subframes and the control arms and doing everything else it needs, well, it sort of goes without saying that you'd want to restore the hardware too. And that's exactly what we were going to do and trying to do. But unfortunately, I missed a little detail where they said it was going to take more than 3 weeks. And for me, if I want to do videos monthly, I don't have 3 weeks to wait for bolts. So that puts us in a little bit of a sticky situation. Option A, we wait 3 weeks and I don't get a video out. Or option B, we take a risk and we learn something new. And we electroplate the bolts ourselves. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, full disclosure, I've never electroplated anything in my life and I barely understand the process. But we're going to have a bit of fun. And if I stuff up, well, maybe we've got no bolts then. But if I succeed, well, it's going to be pretty cool. And I mean, just think about what we can do if we can electroplate our own stuff. The possibilities, endless. So I'll see you in the next video when we electroplate our own bolts and we put everything back together. It's going to look wicked.
Make way for talent.
For talent. Are you talking about me?